Hello everybody, welcome to our review of the Spanish GP Round 5 of 2025 MotoGP. I'm Adam Wheeler, I'm joined by the elated Neil Morrison. Please explain why you've got that sort of smug look on your face.
Well, about 5 minutes before we started recording this podcast, Liverpool only went and won the English League. What a moment. What
the
a
EPL.
Moment. Yeah, I can't believe I'm not sat with an alcoholic beverage to celebrate, but we shall get to that later.
and David Emmett, of course. Dave, you're near the end of your first Grand Prix of the season at the track, and then on the eve of the first mid-season to test.
Yes, I would have said up until sort of the start of the MotoGP race, I would have said I'm looking forward to the test. But actually, we had a cracking race.
It was. Well, I mean, I mentioned to you earlier in the day when Moto3 was a little bit. I mean, Moto3 was a kind of textbook performance from Jose Antonio Herrera, but it was a little kind of dull, where I say in Moto3 parlance.
Yeah.
And then, we had a fantastic MotoGP race or an engaging MotoGP race to make up for it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I said to Neil as we were either going into or just coming out of the Moto2 press conference, which again was almost identical to the Moto3 race in that there was a runaway winner and and a really interesting battle for second. But I said I've got a feeling in my water that MotoGP is going to be a good race, and fortunately my water did not lie.
Okay. Guys, we know that rental.com is a name synonymous with off-road riding, off-road motorcycles, but if you do have a street bike, then go to rental.com and look at the Fit My Bike option. Whatever make or model of motorcycle you have, there's a cool accessory there for you, and they've made it really easy to check out the options for new clip-ons, bars, grips. Just go to rental.com. Thanks very much to Rental for supporting the Paddock Pass podcast. Let's get straight into our moments of the Grand Prix. Dave, what kind of stood out for you?
My moment of the Grand Prix, we saw Fabio Quartararo have a fantastic qualifying, just one of the most amazing qualifying laps we've seen in a long time, certainly his in a long time. But for me, the moment was Fabio getting a great start, challenging Marc coming past, Fabio coming back again, taking the lead. Yeah, in the sprint race, taking the lead, pushing to get away, and then 19 corners into the race, as one of our German colleagues put it. Down he went. He lost Marc came by him on the inside on the way into turn 6, and Fabio was outside, braked, pushing really, really hard, lost the front, crashed out, and really the sprint race became terrible. It just
Why is that your moment?
Because there was so much excitement. There was a non-Ducati leading the race. Fabio looking fantastic. Fabio looking like we could have a really sort of strong race, and then it got ruined.
Neil, just a quick sort of sidebar on that. Should we temper expectations over Fabio Quartararo? I mean, it was his 5th pole position at this circuit. He took his first Grand Prix wins in the Premier class here, I believe, in 2020.
Should have been on the podium in 2019.
This is his track, right?
Yeah, it is. But no, I don't think we should, because Jerez is a fantastic gauge of roughly where everyone is at. And it's not as if this has been a complete bolt from the blue. He was fantastic he was on the front row in Qatar. He was fighting with the Ducatis for the podium in Austin sprint race. Really strong in one preseason test in Sepang. So it's not as if this is just completely a one-off. I think this is evidence that Yamaha have been building, but I'm sure we'll come on to that in a bit. That Fabio's qualifying lap was my moment. Dave referenced it just a moment ago, but one of the great qualifying laps in kind of recent history, I reckon. The fact that Marc, on his very first lap, went into the 1 minute 35, broke the absolute lap record, was quite astonishing. He was able to go that quickly, that early, and we thought, okay, well, that's pole done and dusted. And then Fabio had a decent first run, thought he still had some time in his pocket, but then managed to pull, I think, 4/10 out on his second run. Went second, the first lap of his second run, first flying lap, then went pole, and it was just barely believable. And as Dave said, a little timely reminder, I think, for MotoGP that, yes, this isn't all about Ducati all of the time. There can be the occasional upset from another manufacturer. So, yeah, brilliant stuff from Quartararo. And just seeing him on that pole lap was just absolute poetry. I know you were actually sat in your car outside in the queue, Dave, so you missed it. But I can
first-
assure you, it was really a sight to behold.
Well, I mean, it was the first thing I did once I finally did get into the circuit on Saturday was stick qualifying on it, and I did really enjoy it. And we were down watching warm up from around turn 8-9, and genuinely, Fabio looks fantastic around here. He just looks so good on that bike at the moment.
I'm sorry to puncture a little bit of, the momentum you guys have built up around Fabio and Yamaha, but for me, the moment of this Grand Prix, it has to do with a video that Dorna released on Saturday after the sprint. They have this fantastic footage, behind the scenes when the riders are actually behind the podium waiting to come on, and we hear their kind of interaction, their dialogue, usually in Italian or Spanish. And this,
Italian, which is really odd, because there was a bunch of there's two Spaniards and after the sprint there's two Spaniards and an Italian, and they're talking Italian. After the race, it's a Frenchman, an Italian, and a Spaniard, and they talk Italian. And it does seem the Italian seems to be the lingua franca, which is weird. But
well,
anyway.
This clip was in the car. And, Pecco Bagnaia was saying something like, Mark, you've signed a pact with somebody, to be so good in left-hand turns, because he tried to ape Marquez's entry into turn 7 and crashed. And then, of course, it was through that sequence of turn 7, turn 8, those left-handers where Marquez ultimately, let's be honest, threw this Grand Prix away. Yep. I mean, this should have been his Spanish GP win. I mean, we'll come on to his brother soon, but, I mean... That was a major moment. I think it was, and it also proved, I think he said to us, was it Friday or Saturday in his media debrief, he'd like to remind us that he actually is human.
Yeah.
He's prone to mistakes. He can make mistakes like we saw in Austin. And that was another clanger today.
Yeah, and again, he said also the crash really came from the start because he had a bit of a wheelie off the start, had a really bad start, ended up sort of like a little bit further back than he wanted to be. Tried to get through there, crashed, and then I did like your question to him during his debrief of, was this shades of 2020? And he went, oh, yeah, no, I was definitely thinking of 2020 because he was coming fast through the field, but he also knew, he said he got to, what was it, P13, 12, 13, and that he knew there was a group ahead, but they were just a little bit too far, and he was going, nah, points is enough, I am not going to do that again. So he has learned lessons from 2020. He's learned the wrong lessons from 2019, though, because he's crashing. He has crashed out of 2 of the 5 races. He's crashed out of 2 out of the last 3 races.
Was it you, Dave, who asked him in his media debrief about, Pecco Bagnaia lost the title by crashing?
Yes. Exactly. And what he used to do was crash in practice, and so he wouldn't have to crash in the race, but he stopped crashing in practice and paying the penalty, apparently.
A quick mention, for a number of weeks, we've been talking about the Paddock Pass podcast live show that we finally did at this Grand Prix on Friday. Just a quick opinion on that, guys. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it was fun. We didn't stutter and our way through it.
Well, I did, but I stutter and my way through every podcast, so no change there then.
Yeah, I didn't wet my pants or make
any more than normal.
Yeah, or make any comments that might get me fired, which I'm confident is a success. So yeah, good time was held.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, thanks to Pole Position Travel for putting up the forum for us to be able to do that. We'll put a recording of the show out on our Patreon channel so people can have a listen. We had to cut out the libelous bits, of course. I think it was a little bit more...
freewheeling is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, maybe a little bit less...
filtered.
Yeah, a bit less professional, I'd want to say. A little bit more anecdotal. Well, it was a good show anyway. And of course, as we like to do on these race review podcasts, we are sort of our Patreon followers and people that generally listen to the show, who they voted for their rider of the day. Any guesses, guys?
I'm going to go with Raul Fernandez.
It's a little early for the cynicism, Dave.
It's never too early for cynicism.
Fabio Quartararo, Neil. He did a Liverpool FC. An enormous 73% of the vote of the people that did sort of like, feel emotive enough to send us a message. Alex Marquez pulling in 24%. Maverick Viñales got a couple of votes as well. But that pretty much says it all. And we had a message from Marcus W. as well, who said that, Fabio keeping Pecco at bay, of all people, the guy who's won the last 3 years at this Grand Prix, at this circuit, and Alex essentially doing what he's expected to do on a title-winning bike. It led to kind of a flood of questions. We'll get to those at the moment, but we have to tackle Fabio because you guys picked sort of moments of the weekend associated with him. We've had the vote that gave him the rider of the day. Where did this come from?
Well, I think firstly, it's worth saying that he wasn't the Liverpool of MotoGP because he walked away with the runners-up trophy ad, not with the winners' trophy.
No, but not in our Patreon vote, Neil. He was a clear winner.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it was a great weekend, historic in some ways. I mean, it was his first pole since Indonesia 22. I think it was the first time Yamaha had topped the session since 2023, which is mental in qualifying. And then his podium on Sunday was his first since Indonesia 23. So he hasn't been in these kind of areas for quite some time. And there is a little bit of a worry, I feel, that when a rider isn't at the sharp end of races and fighting for victories every week, that they might just lose that edge somewhat. And it is safe to say that Fabio's had 2.5 years now, really, in the doldrums. But yeah, I mean, I think we've seen signs of this potential in certain rounds so far this season. I think Fabio was probably on for a really similar weekend like this in Austin, but for some of the chaos that happened with the weather there and the bizarre start. And, of course, we talked up Yamaha a lot during pre-season after that brilliant testing performance in Sepang. So, the bike is definitely a lot better this year. Brilliant front end, really has to make that front end work here. We know that this is a great track for Fabio as well. And, I think we saw from Jack Miller's performance in the first half of the race that this was going well for at least two Yamahas. It wasn't just, Fabio doing his own thing up front. So, I think just the changes they've made to this year's bike have made this possible. And clearly it's still a package in kind of development and transition. But, Fabio's showing that he can really rise above it and kind of in 2022 style do things that probably not many other riders in the grid could do.
Dave, I mean, we had a couple of Patreon questions. Tim Kendall, Shut Up Spinucci and Dustin Kelly respectively asked, how do you rate Fabio's performance? What has changed at Yamaha? And is this a one-off? But, I mean, I asked you recently, I think on the last podcast, Yamaha MotoGP's most interesting manufacturer at the moment, and they're now second in the manufacturer's standings. And they've kind of, I don't know, in terms of profile and proactivity, Augusto Fernandez having a lot of questions about testing the V4 repeatedly. I don't know, like Neil was saying, that there is clear progress.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of progress. The progress is also just coming from the expanded test program. They're working a lot. They're working a lot harder. Having Pramac makes such a big difference. Like we saw this weekend, Alex Rins, basically after his crash in FP2, was just in pain and not really able to ride in a way that was ever going to challenge for serious positions. The fact that Fabio is strong, Alex is bad. What you saw last year is if Fabio was good and Alex Rins was bad, that was it. You just don't know what to do. With Fabio Quartararo strong, Alex having a bad weekend, but Jack Miller looked strong all weekend, so there's much more of a clearer picture. And Jack has been pretty good. I mean, he had he had an issue with his bike. He had a technical issue. The
delicate wires. I think he said.
Yes, that's right. Basically there was a bit of bodywork loose that rubbed against the wires. It severed the connection and sort of cut his engine. So, which is a bit of a shame. But the fact that Miller has been strong has been very good. I asked someone who's close to Yamaha about the situation with the bike, and they told me that, well, first of all, they said, this is Fabio. Fabio is special. This is what Fabio is doing. The other thing is, he told me, is they've changed the way that their approach to the engine, if you like, and this was something that Fabio said in the press conference as well. He said, the engine, we gave away a little bit of power for a little bit more drivability, so the thing has got more traction, it accelerates better, it goes faster, and they've gained so much drive that way. Instead of having this really aggressive power delivery that when you open the throttle, the rear spins, you can open the throttle and it will transfer that power. The power might be less, but it still transfers more power to the ground than the old bike.
Two things. Fabio was one of the very few riders who said that didn't struggle with any chatter or vibration issues, which affected a lot of the field here at this Grand Prix. And he also said that the Yamaha hasn't gone through any miracle transformation in the last few weeks. He's still essentially using the same bike that he ran in Austin. And for that reason, I think he was tempering expectation for his home Grand Prix in Le Mans. But, what a fantastic means of promotion.
Yeah, exactly. But that's also one of the things, we've seen Pecco Bagnaia do the same thing. Once they get... What you want from a bike is a base setting. Once the base setting works, Jorge Martin last year, basically the bike works, they didn't touch it. At some point, I think they added the fork wings, but he ran for a while without them. At some point, they added them. That was it. The rest, it was just, harder spring, softer spring, bit more damping, a longer bike, shorter bike, but they just didn't touch the bike. That's the same with Fabio. He has a base setting that he can use. Now he is extracting the maximum performance from himself, from the bike, and he's showing that he really is a very special rider.
Yeah. It didn't really need confirming, but I thought yesterday maybe a bit of a risky strategy, maybe slightly unnecessary, dumping it out and going kind of winner bin style in the sprint, because you deprive yourself of a great deal of experience of how the bike is going to last over a longer run.
But he did it just to be able to feel something, Neil.
Yeah, exactly, which we all do from time to time. Let's be honest. But you have to say it was just quite remarkable how he held that rhythm right the way through the race. Clearly Alex Marquez was faster, no question about that. Marc, I think, would have definitely been faster as well, but the way he was able to calmly keep Bagnaia at bay. And Bagnaia was saying fair play to the guy, like he was on a slower bike than me, I should have been beating him. And obviously issues with front tire pressure obviously kept Bagnaia a decent bit back. We'll probably come on to that in a little bit, but Fabio was fairly flawless. I didn't really see any mistakes from him on the Sunday, and just the kind of aggression that we saw, that attacking spirit. That was him at his very best in 21-22. He was not afraid to get stuck in.
Yeah. Is this one of his best rides?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's a decent shout. That was his best podium position for 3 years.
Yeah.
Since Austria 22, I think. The rest of the podium finishes have been third, where he just managed to grab and hold on to something or someone.
Yeah, and we're now 5 races into this year. Fabio has double the amount of points, 50, that he had after 5 races last year. So one of the questions was, is this a one-off? I think that shows in itself that, this weekend obviously buffs out that points tally a good bit. But, I think there is signs of building there.
Exactly. It's not a one-off, but it's not also, the new reality. It's not going to be podiums for the rest of the year. But it's an exceptional performance from an exceptional rider under exceptional circumstances. But it is a sign of progress.
Yeah, because in Qatar they were crap. They were not competitive at all. Yeah. Nothing like this.
They're really dependent on the track, on the grip from the track, and the conditions of the track and all the rest of it.
That's why Le Mans is going to be a complete lottery, because you could have 25-degree temperatures, possibly similar weather to this, like we had in 2024, or it could be 12 degrees.
Yeah. Also with Le Mans, what you have is it's sort of like 7 degrees in the morning and 29 in the afternoon. So yes, it could be very changeable.
And grip is decent, and Yamaha needs grip, and then that's quite an interesting proposition potentially for Fabio's home Grand Prix. But I think what was significant today was Fabio had always said, "We have grip, we're good. We don't have grip, we're not good." Yet it was pretty hot out there today, this afternoon, and
there wasn't much grip.
And there wasn't much grip after the Moto2 race. Yet Fabio was able to lead the race for the first, 6-7 laps.
Yeah.
So I think progress there is potential.
We're not slighting, Marquez won this Grand Prix, and we're not slighting Alex at all by sort of delaying him. In fact, anything, we want to dive into that a bit more. But I think it's important to try to identify why Pecco Bagnaia did not beat Quartararo, because we're all expecting the move to come. And I think Bagnaia cut the most frustrated version of himself post-race that I've seen this year. He was not a happy bunny. And his look when he had to do the extra 10 to sort of 15 minutes of Spanish and Italian questioning after the press conference, he hung his head in deep disappointment. He just wasn't a happy chap.
No, exactly. The problem is tyre the problem is the front tyre. The front tyre has a lot of load with all of this extra aero with the ride height devices. I asked Jack Miller about it. He said, "Yeah, what do you expect? We're generating between 20 and 30 kilos of load extra on the front tyre, and that's at a track where you're only just clipping 300. So you can imagine what it's like at a place." Where you've got, where you're hitting sort of 330, 340, 350, that puts so much pressure and temperature into the tyre. If you can run on your own, then you've got fresh air and it's taking away some of that temperature. It's taking away, and that's reducing some of the pressure. But if you are stuck behind, basically there were a few riders who said, because Maverick Viñales said exactly the same thing, you get close, and then the temperature and pressure comes up because of all the turbulence, because of all of the broken air, turbulent air in front of you. You lose the cooling on the front. The pressure goes up. The front starts locking under braking. So when you brake, also when you're turning in, the thing doesn't want to turn in when you go. It starts to move the front. You've got less confidence, and you don't have the confidence to actually make a move and make it stick.
Well, you and Dave, you and I were watching the race together, and we commented how loose Bagnaia looked on the braking.
Yeah,
because usually he's got the thing very stable and set.
Yeah, I think also he's just not got that bike where he wants it yet. He said in the press conference that he's still looking for something from the bike to be able to ride, because he didn't have these problems last year on the GP24, which to an extent you saw with Alex Marquez, because Alex Marquez managed to get past. He was stuck behind Fabio for I think about 10 laps.
And Bagnaia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, behind Bagnaia and Marquez, got past both of them, no problem, and away he went to the races. So there's more to it than that, but we shall come to.
Yeah, I think that the message is that Bagnaia really needs this test tomorrow.
100%.
And also he can't consider doing a Pedro Acosta and going back to the same version of the motorcycle that Alex Marquez has, because he says he feels there's more potential in the new version. He says it accelerates better. He says as well it's got more top speed. So it must be confusing and frustrating for him to be having given a better tool, but then it's also slightly unwieldy.
Welcome to motorcycles. The motorcycles are vehicles which operate in 3D. They're extremely complex, and you change one variable at one point, and it completely. It works all the way through the rest of the motorcycle, and you have no idea. It's really difficult to predict how it's going to affect the rest of the bike.
Yeah, it was disappointing that Bagnaia, still struggling with the same issues in the sprint, looked so blunt around what is one of his better tracks, won the last 3 Grand Prix here, and just I thought, what a listless performance. And at least at the start of the race, he did show that he was willing to get stuck in. He was super aggressive with Marc on the first lap, I think, exiting the stadium section. The pair had some contact, and you thought, okay, this is kind of the Bagnaia we know, especially the Bagnaia we've seen at this circuit as well in the last couple of years. But then it was quite underwhelming, and obviously the issues with the front tire pressure caused the bluntness of him, basically. Maverick Viñales is also saying it wasn't just the front tire that overheated, it was like the whole bike felt as though it was starting to overheat when you got within 5 meters of the rider ahead.
Because it's the brakes, it's the engine, everything. All of a sudden you've just got less air coming onto the bike.
And then you yo-yo, depending on where you're quicker around the track.
Exactly. I'm not going to mention the man who ruined MotoGP again, but there you go.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that Marc gave him a bit of an open goal here this weekend, and Pecco was not able to take advantage of it. And once again, he was comprehensively outperformed by a guy on the GP24.
One thing I thought was quite tasty to see was that first lap, because I think you'll see that has become a bit more of a tactic as the year goes on, because people want to duff up Marc in the first few corners, certainly the drop to get the whole shot, the first lap. That's the only way you're going to be able to stop Marquez from enacting his MO and escaping and setting the pace.
Yeah, but also around Jerez, because I remember, I think, was it 2022 when Fabio got stuck behind Pecco and just couldn't pass. He was doing exactly the same thing. He was clearly faster than Pecco, but he couldn't get close enough to make a pass. And whenever he did get close enough to be able to attempt a pass, his front tyre pressure and temperature went up. So it's one of these things. It's it does seem also because Jerez is quite hard on the front tyre, so it makes it much more sensitive when it does come up. So I think this is an issue we're going to face.
We can be very critical of Pecco, and I think there is reason to be critical of him. However, he hasn't crashed in a race this year. We're 5 races in. Yep. He has 29 points more than he had at this time a year ago. And despite these trials and tribulations that he's faced in the first 5 rounds, he's just 20 points off Alex Marquez in the championship, at the summit of the championship. So considering that when this Jerez test happens on the day after the Spanish GP and him and Christian Gabriel and his crew get to work, they normally find something now. So it's not like it's a total disaster. It's not like he's out of the running. He's very much in it. And arguably with one of his most trying parts of the season past him now.
But he's 19 points behind someone who has crashed twice in 5 races.
Just before we get off this subject, Dave, we had another question in from Alex Heff, who said, should Ducati be taking Pecco's struggles as a hint they've taken a wrong turn on their development? Marc is just able to ride around the issues better.
This was, again, something that sort of, which I thought was almost a surprising admission in the press conference, that Pecco was basically saying, Marc doesn't seem to suffer from these issues. Marc is capable of riding around it. I think it's also an admission that but Marc Marquez might be quite a good motorbike racer. They haven't taken a wrong. I don't think they have taken a wrong direction. I think that the bike isn't finished yet. They tried something. Especially with the GP25 engine. I think they got the GP25 engine wrong, but they ditched that and they're stuck with this new chassis. I mean, they can change the chassis back whenever they like, and the aero is virtually identical. So it's not something there. It's just there's a very slight change in balance, and it's just a question of working everything through, working everything out, and having 4 races to actually race the thing gives you so much data to actually work with and understand and improve.
Can I just call time on this section of the podcast? Let's talk about the winner, the guy that won the race. We've barely spoken about him. We've barely mentioned him.
We're getting to that.
Yeah, we're nearly 30 minutes in and we haven't mentioned the guy that has won his first MotoGP race and won it brilliantly in front of his home crowd.
Yeah, I know, but that is the whole narrative. I mean, Alex Marquez, you could say is the ultimate guy in the shadows,
Yeah,
not just for results, but his whole existence.
So let's stop treating him as such.
I want to stand up for Alex Marquez here, because Alex Marquez, like if he'd won here and wasn't leading the championship, had been elsewhere, then he'd say, yeah, this was something
flash in the pan.
Exactly. But he's been second
8 times.
Yeah, he's basically been second. He's won. He was riding fantastic. No one was going to beat him today. I think Marc would have struggled to beat him.
Oh wow, that's a shout.
Exactly. I think that, especially after that start, if he hadn't have crashed out, he would have really had to work to beat Alex. The other races where Marc has been up against Alex were a bit of a walk in the park for Marc. Marc could play with him. No one was going to play with Alex today. Alex was really at the top of his game, and this was one of the best rides by. This is one of the best rides I think I've seen in a very long time. It was just perfection.
It was excellent, and it was a really tricky weekend for him. He had 2 crashes on Friday. The second of them, a big one up at turn 5. We saw him, struggling to get to his feet after that, crawling to the side of the track. And a couple of the other Ducati riders were saying, Alex is fast, but he's pretty much on the limit. He's a bit more on the limit than the rest of us. And you wondered how that would work out over a 25-lap race in Jerez, where it can be so tricky with front tire temperatures and pressures, and with a pretty stacked, talented sort of leading group. But aside from that moment at turn 4 where it looked as though he got his braking all wrong, managed to thankfully avoid the guys up ahead, the 2 Ducatis up ahead. That was pretty scary, the way he recovered from that and cut through. And it was, it was picture perfect. He is obviously in the best moment of his career, that is without question. But he's now building up a kind of results portfolio where you're like, this is maybe a guy that can fight for the championship.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's leading it again.
The consistency is there, and he's on a brilliant bike, obviously. And I did an interview with him in Qatar, and he said that obviously 2024 was a really difficult year when he was on GP23. That wasn't an easy bike to ride, and it was difficult because it was his second year with Ducati, and he was expected to kick on from a strong end to 23, and he wasn't really able to do that. But he said he felt that his riding was better and might have been masked somewhat by the crash he had in Aragon with Pecco. He said he was actually pretty badly injured after that for a decent couple of races. But he felt in the final part of last year he was riding at his, the highest level he had done. And then within, I think, 2 or 3 laps, he realized in the Barcelona test with the GP24, this is going to be a pretty good opportunity for me. And he also said that he has the impression that this could maybe be the best opportunity of his entire career. He's not expecting to be in a situation like this maybe in next year or the year after that, where he is arguably on the most sorted package on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, the more you work in sports, the more you see that timing is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of taking a contrasting example, Pedro Acosta, everything is there for him to dominate races, but he's not the right time for him. He hasn't got the right motorcycle, the right experience perhaps, or the maturity, whatever you want to apply to the situation. But that time right now is for Alex Marquez. And I mean, I love the romanticism of the victory. He rode superbly. Everything seems to be going extremely well for him, but there is still that mitigating factor. And, like one of our patrons asked us, Barry Power, saying, is the GP24 the greatest racing motorcycle of all time?
Yeah, probably. But I mean, Alex still had to be.
So has to ride it.
Yeah, he's still got to ride it. He beat arguably the greatest motorcycle racer of all time, and he beat 2 other riders on the same bike. Now, one of them managed to crash himself, managed to crash out shortly after I noted how well he was riding. Like literally seconds after. But
I like the way that you were praising Fermin Aldeguer and then he dropped it instantaneously.
Yes, exactly. That's right. I saw him come into the view. I thought, that's pretty quick. He's doing very well. And the reason he was pretty quick is because he was overshooting turn 6 and was about to lose the front. So, yes, judgment sorely lacking there on my part and possibly on Fermin's part.
Alex Marquez, let's just get ahead of ourselves for a moment, would be a popular world champion, right? I mean, it would be, I mean, to use football terms...
It'd be a hilarious world champion.
It'll be a Leicester City EPL
win,
that's
yeah, I think that's a good one. I don't even know about football, and I think it's like Leicester City.
I mean, Marquez came into MotoGP with a Repsol Honda, with, kind of standing at the foot of the mountain, and then, went onto the LCR Honda, really didn't, you thought, okay, he's a good rider. He's not a great rider. But now, like he said in the press conference today, someone's given him the toolbox, and if he blows this...
Yeah, I mean, your point about timing is really good, because it's not just about having the right tools, it's also about being in the right moment in your life and your personal development. I think being teammate to his brother really helped as well, because he saw... That took some of the pressure off of him and allowed him to make the next step in his career.
KTM, Maverick Viñales. We were slightly, I don't want to say cynical, skeptical, perhaps, that he could repeat some of the potential from Qatar.
Were we? No. About Maverick Viñales, I refuse to
listen,
believe
can I just point out, I always believed it's you two that throw horrible nicknames at him. And it's now, the random number generator's even been made into an acronym.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, I think we had a question from one of our Patreons about that. Stefan Bidiuc, I think.
Yes,
who said, can we now drop the Maverick, the random number generator? I think it's early, but yes, this was a big dent in that random number generator.
The important thing as well, Dave, is that Maverick said he can't remember the last time he had to finish like 4th position at Jerez.
Yes,
it's not like this is not a fortress for him.
Exactly. And he just looked strong. He looked confident. He looked sort of calm, collected. He did everything right. He said he was feeling pretty good. He was managing the vibration fairly well. Yeah, I mean, it was a really good ride for him, and for him to do it like back to back. It's still a bit early, and because he also said, like,
don't do it.
He also said sometimes you come to tracks. Sometimes there are tracks which suit the bike where you're going to go well, and tracks which don't suit the which is going to be a little more difficult. There are tracks which suit you as a rider, and others that don't. So you are going to be up and down. But he felt much more positive, and for him to be here, he was expecting. He said this is one of his worst tracks, and he said I expected to be bad here, and he wasn't.
Sorry, Dave. I thought you were maybe just going to say that he could start fighting for the championship this year.
No.
It's
But I will say I think that is more down to KTM than down to Maverick.
Yeah. I love this weekend from Maverick because he had a tough time on Friday in that he was really quite strong in terms of his rhythm, but lost out at the final time attack and had to go through Q1. And there's been so many times in Maverick's career where he's had a really good showing in the weekend. It gets to that crunch moment and then he just goes missing completely. But he came through Q1 minimum first, qualified well in the second row of the grid. Pedro Acosta, the other KTM in Q2, was like 12th. Really strong, solid sprint. I mean, this was just a really solid weekend. And there was a moment in the race where he was, catching Bagnaia hand over fist. To finish 3.6 seconds off Alex Marquez's victory time is fairly remarkable. And I don't know if you saw this, but one thing that really impressed me was after one of Dorna's behind-the-scenes videos from Qatar, after the race had come, obviously had concluded, and the notification of his 16-second penalty for incorrect tire pressure had come through, Maverick was bouncing around like...
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It was a great race. Well done, everybody. And you could see Hervé Poncharal, his team manager, saying to him, Maverick, thank you for this positivity and for constantly being upbeat. And he said this, it's just, you just feel the guy has come such a long way in terms of his maturity, in terms of how he approaches things. Do you remember his times at Yamaha where he would just blow a head gasket anytime something went against him? And he's taking these things in his stride. I think we need, obviously, a bigger sample size before we can definitively say that, Maverick is back. But a second weekend in succession when he handed Pedro Acosta his arse.
Yes.
Acosta had no answer for this. And he said that he had found some improvements in the second half of the race today and he was pretty consistent. But the guy has been properly outperformed.
Yeah, since he sorted the KTM out in Argentina, I mean, Maverick has had something that the KTM the others haven't, which is a base setting. And from there, they've just been trying to chip away and improve that feeling and braking and also lower the vibration issues that they're all having. But Viñales, like Neil's saying, he just has this characteristic at the moment of being happy and making the best of what he's got, and it's working. I think Le Mans will be a strong Grand Prix for him. I mean, it depends what the weather.
Yeah, because he's decent there as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he won in 2017. I think it was Yamaha's 1,000th Grand Prix victory that year, which is a big marker. I was asking him when he was chasing Bagnaia down, where were you making up time on him? And he said through the fast lefts and the fast rights, the turn 7, turn 8, and then turn 11 and 12. And I said, but the KTM isn't a bike known for its high corner speed. And that's Maverick's one of his big strong points. It always has been one of his strong points through his career. You think of his best tracks, it's Silverstone, it's Phillip Island, where you obviously have to carry that high corner speed. And you think like, okay, this is a guy that's kind of putting his mark on the bike. He's making his strengths work on a bike where you maybe didn't think it would be able to deal with that.
And he's got one of those attributes that I think someone like Enea Bastianini right now would kill for, which is, the qualifying potential is unreal. He's one of the few riders that can absolutely harness everything that he's got in his hands to make that lap. I mean, he had the best Q2 streak, didn't he, of making it straight into Q2 record, I thought, through last season into this season, or even the beginning of this season, I think
he lost it in Thailand maybe.
With the first Grand Prix of the year. But Viñales, getting KTM higher up the grid has been also one of their kind of Achilles heel facets, you could say, and he's doing a good job in that aspect. So more to come, it has to be said. At this point of the show, guys, we'd just like to, we mentioned pole position travel earlier on. If you're considering trips to the German and the Czech GPs this year, then look at polepositiontravel.com. We have a discount code that applies to the podcast. If you enter PPOD25X, that's PP0OD25X, then you'll be able to get a small discount, and then pole position, when it comes to their event, they're comprehensive, whether it's sort of airport transfers, guides, or experiences at the circuit themselves, having idiots like us talk, during an evening meal. They really
sometimes they have really well-informed speakers as well, so you might not...
Are you up soon, are you, Dave?
Well, I'll be at Assen.
Well, can I just say on another quick side note that during our live show we had the pleasure to speak to two of the Red Bull, the Red Bull. Let me try and get this right. The Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup riders, and both of them finished on the podium today in the second race.
Yeah,
so fair play to
Thompson won, and
Christian Daniel
was third. So
yeah, first win for Carter.
Yeah, and first podium finish for
Christian Daniel, I think so. Yeah.
So that's it. That's the Paddock Pass podcast effect. Red Bull rookies out there. If you are looking for prime results, then get in touch, and maybe we can sort you out. Could we mention? I don't know. Do we have to talk about Mark? Because we touched on him.
Well, maybe. I mean, it was quite interesting. We touched on him a little bit earlier, but I think, you have to say. I mean, it's not a crisis. It's not drastically worrying, but it is two massive mistakes in the last the last 3 weekends. He was, I was thinking this was just a foregone conclusion after the dominance of Saturday and the ease with which he won the sprint race. I thought there really was no question who was going to win this one, but it maybe just showed that his understanding of this bike still isn't quite what it needs to be the absolute complete package. He is still ridiculously fast, but it seemed that he was maybe caught out by the fact that he had obviously not really followed anyone during the weekend, and he had been doing all of his running alone. Suddenly he finds himself behind 1-2 other bikes. His front tire pressure goes up perhaps, and he goes in to turn 8. Said he didn't really do anything that different or wrong, but he loses the front.
It was very early, so I don't think it would. I think, because I think Pecco Bagnaia suggested that in the press conference. I don't think he'd been behind someone for long enough for it to make that much of a difference. I think it's just down. He's lost so many years of his career. He's basically lost 4 years of his career.
Okay.
And he can feel it. He can taste that championship. He wants this so bad, and I think that is causing him to make mistakes. He's just too overeager, and that's what is going wrong. Is he's pushing too hard. He needs to step back and relax a little bit. I think if he had like a 50-point lead in the championship, then he would back off a little bit and stop making these mistakes. But if he keeps making these mistakes, it's going to be really hard for him to get a 50-point lead in the championship.
We said to you, Dave, I'm not crashing in practice, which used to be his MO. I'll crash in practice, find the limit, and then not drop it in Sunday.
Yeah, and in the pre-event press conference on Thursday, he said that he still hasn't found the limit with this bike. And it is a different kind of way of riding to the Honda, where he had been with it for 10 years and knew it absolutely inside out, how far he could push it, how it would react. And he's still kind of understanding that. And at the time I thought, wow, that is quite scary that he's this good and this fast at this early stage of this season, and he still hasn't found the limit. But in a way, I think it shows that he's still trying to understand some things, and he's not completely at home and comfortable with this year's bike.
We've got 17 rounds left. That's still a lot of do you know what? I haven't even done the maths. That's how far off I am. But there's a lot of points left.
Confusing day for Mark. I mean, bitter disappointment. A strong comeback. He said, he didn't want to over-exaggerate, I think his word was, when he's thinking of 2020 coming back through. And then, of course, comes across the finish line to see his brothers won for the first time. First brothers to win in the Premier class now?
Yeah.
Did the Oki brothers win in different classes?
They did, yeah. Yes, Harachika won a world championship. Yeah. And Nobuatsu, did he win a Grand Prix? I'm not sure. I need to go back and check that.
Like a Japanese Grand Prix?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah,
with a Suzuki, I want to say. No?
He didn't win the Suzuki, no.
Okay.
But yeah. My train of thought has temporarily been lost.
Well, just
so I think it's
on the theme of brothers, that's just like another, again, a little narrative point for MotoGP.
Yeah, I think also it does. It sort of softens the blow a little bit for Mark, but I think it's also quite funny that it is Alex that is making life so very difficult for Marc at the moment.
One interesting question on this, Dave, just to wrap up the subject. Just Jono said Marc was riding with a quite badly damaged bike. At what point did they give a black or a yellow flag to pull him into the pits? Is it only when, say, like fluid is leaking onto the track?
Off the top of my head, out of the regs, it is basically whenever he is causing a danger, an active danger to other riders. Now, that can be from fluids, a danger to other riders or to himself. So if the bike is so damaged, for example, there's a much better case to be made for him to have been meatballed in Austin when he broke his foot peg, and his rear brake, and he didn't have any. He couldn't put his foot down, and he didn't have a rear brake. Here. The pegs were all working. He could ride.
It was cosmetic damage, wasn't it?
It was cosmetic damage. There were bits and pieces of sort of carbon fibre falling off occasionally, but then again, that happens every crash. You crash and you leave bits, especially with so much, with so many wings all over the bike, with so much aerodynamics. You're always leaving bits of crap all over the track whenever you crash. So you can't really stop a race or meatball someone whenever they crash. You'd have to stop the race to clear up the. If you deem bits of fairing to be a danger to other riders, then you'd have to be, you'd be red flagging the race about six times a race. But it is literally when he poses an active danger either to himself or to other riders. So leaking fluids, absolutely, you get meatballed. Lose the brake, or if the steering head is so obviously twisted that you can't ride safely, then yes. Or if there was real damage, which was a real threat to safety.
The train of my thought has returned. I was going to just mention that his rhythm with that bike that was clearly a little bit damaged was quite impressive. He did his fastest lap on lap 18 at 37.5. So from that we can glean he was going to be quite good.
Exactly, because if you look at it, after his crash in Austin, he was 2 or 3 seconds a lap slower. So there was clearly something. He couldn't ride that bike usefully. Whereas this, he was just really fast. He was as fast as everyone else, and he came through to finish 12th, 13th. Yeah. Which, again, useful. It looked like he was going to lose 5 points to his, his brother would have led the championship by 4 or 5 points, something like that. But he comes through and he's just a point behind.
Well, anybody watching this on YouTube will know that we know a thing or two about cosmetics, and especially damaging parts. And also knowing Marquez and seeing how many times the Alpina air fence has been punctured this weekend, I'm surprised he didn't just try to go a bit faster and spear the air fence, get the race red flagged, and then had a restart. He would have jumped on the other bike and been happy.
Yeah, but he has form with crashing at Jerez, so he was probably not all that keen about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to our higher, fire, and grade of the Grand Prix. I'm going to say for my higher, this one's tricky. There's so many candidates, but I'm actually going to nominate the chief of the local police for the exemplary job of traffic management this weekend and transforming. This is the thing about Jerez. It's so busy. I mean, the official crowd figure was 224,000. Don't say anything yet, Dave. That was the official crowd figure, which is one of the best attended Jerez Grand Prix for quite a while.
Since they stopped fiddling the figures back in 2015.
Yeah, okay. Your statement is made emphatically. It was busy though, right?
Oh, it was really busy. They said it was 101,000, I think, on
the bike
Sunday.
Park looked phenomenal.
It was, I mean, when we rolled in this morning, what was it, quarter to 9, 9 o'clock, something like that? The bike park was already full. It was absolutely rammed, and they had sorted the traffic out on Sunday. Sunday traffic was really smooth, both in and out of the track. But you can't hire him without firing him for what he did on Saturday, which was a complete mess.
Yeah, Saturday was a fuck up. I mean, and it had me very frustrated with this Grand Prix. Despite, I think the crowd and the weather and the atmosphere hides quite a few flaws, and I think Jerez needs to up their game. So that was a bit of a kind of a twisted view on the hire. Neil, who was your? Who's your
a hire and fire all in one
appointment prospect?
My hire was Manny Gonzalez, who is with every passing week, looking more like the chief assailant in the Moto2 World Championship this year.
It was an amazing ride. It really was impressive.
All weekend.
It was just like flawless from the start of the weekend to the end. And he's jumped on the Intact GP bike this year, WP suspension, trying that for the first time, and that with Calex's 25 frame just suits him absolutely to the ground. Friday afternoon, he was so much faster than everyone else in terms of rhythm. And at that time, I was thinking, okay, no one can get close to him. He just needs to qualify well, which he did, got pole, and get a good start, which he did, and he just led the race so comfortably. It wasn't maybe the most exciting of performances because he was, I think, 3.5 seconds clear of Barry Baltus at the flag. But yeah, Gonzalez just looked so good, and really does look like he can, take the fight all the way to the other kind of assailants in Moto2.
No, and Dave and I were talking about him quickly when he finished the race. I mean, he was faultless. It was a fantastic performance, but he's kind of stuck in Moto2, isn't he? And, who was the last person in Moto2 that kind of hung around and defended a championship? I mean, Johan Zarco. That's a long time ago. I mean, it only reinforces the point that Moto2 is just a stepping stone. But with the contract situations for 2026 and the flux that the sport is in ahead of 2027 and the big change, it's hard to see, Gonzalez having more performances like this and then fitting anywhere in the Premier class because he is just another very fast Spaniard.
He is, but he's also had a pretty interesting, and different path through to, the top of Moto2 than, the majority of the riders there. He's come through Supersport 300, then Supersport 600, and then into Moto2, and to make that transition is really not easy. There's only been a handful of riders that have done that in the past, and I don't think any of them have gone on to win the actual Moto2 World Championship. So I agree, it's not as if MotoGP as a class needs another Spaniard, but
I think it's useful for Dorna because it shows that there are side paths into it. I mean, we had it with Senna Agius too. I mean, like Senna Agius, I think he didn't come through Moto3. He came through the European Moto2 Championship. So we're starting to see people coming into MotoGP from other championships. And I think Manu Gonzalez, Manu Gonzalez's unique hiring point is the fact that he came in through this circuitous route through the other championship, through the World Superbike Championship, and it's a real booster for World Superbikes.
But that's backstory. I'm talking about hiring in future. If you're a MotoGP team, why would you want to hire Manu Gonzalez over the current crop?
Because Dorna tell you to, because it's a really good way of promoting the World Superbike Championship.
So you would hire Manu Gonzalez, but as a MotoGP team manager, it could be a little bit more tricky.
I'm just trying to say I had a good weekend at Moto2, Ed.
Right, okay. Yeah. We're near the end of the podcast now. Hold on, fella. Dave?
My hire is Fabio Quartararo because he is so good. He's so much better than bike. He is capable of taking the bike right to the limits to show exactly what it's capable for. He's also capable of showing the engineers what the bike can do if they keep working. He's inspirational as far as that. He's exactly the kind of figure that you need inside of a factory. I mean, it's the same with Marc Marquez. It's the same to an extent with Pedro Acosta, even though he's sort of like he's messing up. He's one of those riders who can make the difference. And if you have one of those riders who can make the difference, then it's the difference between success and failure. It pushes the whole project forward.
Would you pay 12 million for him?
If you're Yamaha, yes. If you're Ducati, probably not, because you've got a whole bunch of people ready to jump on the bike. But even Ducati would pay over Ducati because they're good at lowballing because they can say, "Do you want to come and ride our bike and be world champion?" But yeah, I mean, they would shell out the good money to put Fabio Quartararo on their bike because for a start, it would stop Fabio Quartararo being on someone else's bike.
Yep. Not much more to... Well, I can't argue with that at all. Fire. It may be a bit harsh, but I'm going to nominate Marco Bezzecchi for mine. Just the results. He needs to lead the Aprilia effort at the moment.
There was me praising him into Pang.
Yeah, and maybe, maybe he's pushing the limits. Maybe in the garage he's doing everything he needs to do. But then there are just like critical mistakes that are happening and it's not delivering the results. I think he outbraked himself again today, ran off the track, and that was the race gone. I'm being harsh, of course. We're only 5 races into the season and he's on a brand new motorcycle in a brand new environment. But, I think, there needs to be a little bit of a flash of inspiration from Marco, as much on Saturday as on Sunday.
Second fastest lap of the race, though. So he did have the speed when he came back out of the gravel. But, it was a disappointing result.
Who's your fire, Neil?
Well, a quick mention for David Munoz, who has managed to get another penalty for riding like a twerp in Moto3. Was making it look as though he was riding on the limit in qualifying, but it was actually a couple of seconds off the pace. And I think Simon Crafar, our chief steward, spotted a few riders doing this in Qatar and came down. Well, said to the Moto3 riders before this weekend started, I'm going to come down heavily if I see you doing this. You have to be in the final moments of qualifying or in practice on a Friday, full tilt the whole way. I don't want to see you kind of pretending that you're at the limit when you're actually kind of touring maybe 4 seconds off the absolute pace. Munoz didn't take this on board, and basically after qualifying in the front row was then thrown to the back of the grid, just had his weekend was ruined from there. But it's not actually going to be him; it's going to be Pedro Acosta, because, as I said previously, the second weekend in succession that he's been comprehensively outfought by Maverick Viñales. He even finished behind Brad Binder in today's race, and the Spanish Grand Prix was supposed to be an occasion for him to assert himself, and it's all been a bit of a flat fart for Pedro this 2025 season so far.
And he just looks so miserable.
Yeah. Actually, a quick props to Brad Binder, who had the worst weekend of his MotoGP career in Qatar. Reversed that. They said they made a big change on the bike for race day today, and it gave him some of that edge grip that he's craving at the moment. And he came back from P13 on the grid to P6. So there's some green shoots there for Brad, and you'd imagine he's going to be one of the busier riders in the test here tomorrow. Dave, who's your fire?
My fire, and I feel quite sorry for him for doing it, is Joan Mir, because Mir was having a really strong race. He's looked really strong all weekend, was really happy with everything he was doing. I think he was sixth or 7th about halfway through the race, and he crashes out. He crashes out because Franco Morbidelli comes past him. In fact, he said he let Franco Morbidelli past because he thought Morbidelli was faster than him. Once he got past him, he saw that Morbidelli was all over the place, riding really weird lines, having a really, really bad time. But then he tried to follow Morbidelli into turn 6, only Morbidelli was on a Franco Morbidelli line, and Joan Mir crashed. But another crash for Joan Mir. And the bike is clearly getting better. The bike is pretty good, if a little bit underpowered. They're going to be working on the engine which Aleix Espargaro used. That bike looked fast. So Joan Mir needs to calm down, start settling for points, start putting together a more consistent performance.
9th crashed in the last 11 Sunday races. I mean, that's not really acceptable,
That's not really terrific, is it?
Yeah, for a factory effort. And as we said in the Paddock Note shows, go and listen to them on Patreon, everybody. If you want to sign up for an annual membership and get all the extra content. And you do want to sign up? Yes, definitely, because we've got competitions to run as well. We've got passes for the British Grand Prix, 3 pairs, including a Sunday tour, as well as some paddock passes, these exclusive kind of access for the Dutch TT as well coming up. So we've got some competitions. Keep an eye on our Patreon page if you're a member there to find out how to win it. You just have to answer to some of the 2 posts actually that we put on and to be entered into that draw. And there's not that many people in contention to win, so you've got a great chance.
Exactly. You have a fantastic chance if you sign up for it's the basic, it's the simple tier for the Silverstone tickets, and it's an annual Paddock Insider $10 tier for the paddock passes for Assen.
Yeah, and just a quick mention on Franco Morbidelli. He was one of the walking wounded, and when we saw Alex Marquez in Parc Ferme with his leathers undone on his left wrist, that was due to those crashes that he had when riders were, like Neil was saying, insinuating he was taking too many risks. Franco had a crash today, knocked his cervicals as well. He didn't actually have a concussion, which was one of the first pieces of misinformation that came out, after his heavy smash in Portimao last year. So Franco, a bit beaten up from his Saturday accident, struggling a bit today as well. That might account for some of the erratic riding, potentially. If you're in pain, I can't imagine these bikes are terribly easy or fun to ride. And unfortunately, another DNF for the Italian in the VR46 team. A quick word on our Alpine Stars Paddock Pass Podcast Fantasy League. We're now up to over 3,000 players. And guess who had a good day? Oh, yes.
Somewhat-
Maverick Viñales, Ayagura, and there was someone else in my team who also finished high up. So I'm feeling quite chipper, whereas you two,
Well,
disastrous.
I had the winner of my team, so it wasn't that disastrous. But
Yeah, so did I, but I also
the
had
other
Marc
three-
Marquez.
I had Marquez, Zarco, and Fermin Aldeguer, who binned
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
So,
I had Marc Marquez and Fermin Aldeguer, so that didn't quite work out. At least I didn't boost Marc Marquez like a lot of people
So
did.
when you're not hacking into people's teams, Dave, you're cursing riders by saying how good they look on
Exactly.
TV.
a bit of black magic.
Multi-skilled, multi-talented me.
Just to finish off this podcast, guys, what is your grade for this Grand Prix out of 10? We like to sort of give these marks with any observations, that we've seen around the edges. I've given my opinion on sort of the organisational point of it. For me, Jerez has this charm, like Neil was mentioning in our podcast, coming into the Grand Prix that's undeniable. It's the first European round, but I feel like it's outgrowing this site. The motorcycles are fast enough. That's always a talking point. But if this amount of people keep turning up and it gets bigger, which is great news for the sport, then, we're better off going somewhere like Portimao, in my opinion.
But
For the first European race, sorry.
But this is incredibly successful, and it is the opening of the season. So,
a 7. I'm saying a 7, Dave. There you go.
Right. Well, I'm going to give it a 7 as well, but it's in two parts because I'm going to give it a 2 for Saturday because the traffic situation was absolute carnage, at least coming from Jerez. By the way, I'm not staying in Jerez next year. I'm staying in Arcos or to the north because then it's nice and easy. But also the sprint was absolutely abominable. It was just an absolute snoozer. If you look at there's a lap chart which shows sort of all of the positions, and I think there was like 2
One.
actual proper overtakes in the entire race. So, but in terms of the Sunday, I'll give it a 9 out of 10 because it was fantastic. Traffic was really well organised. The crowd were absolutely fantastic, as they always are, and the race was really good. Despite sort of the second half it being difficult to overtake, there was still a lot of developments. There was a lot going on. The first few laps were absolutely superb, and it was just really, really enjoyable, full of storylines. The magic of Alex Marquez winning in front of his home crowd. So much. Fabio Quartararo. We had only 2 Ducatis in the top 4, which is again
Refreshing.
Yes, exactly. It was just what we needed at this point of the
But then
championship.
you've made a 2 plus a 9, which means you turned up to 11 out of 10 for the grade. I'm trying to work that one out.
Yeah, no, actually it's 5.5, but I'm going to give it a 7 because I'm feeling generous.
Fair enough. Neil?
Yeah, I agree with really what you've said. So I'm going to go for an 8 just because today was a pleasant surprise.
It's only an 8 because Liverpool have just become champion.
It is. Correct. Yeah, I can't deny it. There you go.
You're more optimistic about it, yeah.
Okay, well that's it for this week, guys. We'll be back for another podcast soon. We're going to be previewing Le Mans before we know it. But esto es todo from the Spanish Grand Prix. I hope you enjoyed this pod. Let us know any comments. If you have any questions, don't forget to check out rental.com as well as our Patreon channel and polepositiontravel.com.